My dad started out with a bus line. He was one of the first to have a bus line running from Boston to New York. And he did it he had 7 brothers and sisters, and he had the help of them. And he'd run a bus from Chinatown, just like they run now, to New York, Times Square. But that only lasted about a year. The Depression hit really hard. 1929, I was born in 1926, I was 3 years old. But I remember him coming home one day and telling my mother, no more bus line. I also remember a lot of other things about 1929. There was a credit union called the Morris Plan, and the Morris Plan was sort of like a bank, and my dad had a few $100s in that particular bank, and he ran over to get the money out, and the door was shut right in his face. That I remember very, very vividly. But after that, my dad went to work for the post office, and at that time, the post office was not a good job. It was a job that you had to have an extra job, and having 3 other siblings in the family, he had to get another job in the evening, but we made it by, and we didn't even know that we were poor, and we were poor. And that's the way most of the people lived where I grew up. And Dorchester, Massachusetts was where I spent most of my childhood, from about maybe 7 years old till going through Dorchester High School. And at that time, kids in high school were maybe 22, 23 years old. They didn't have any outlook to get a job or anything else. They joined the CCC. The CCC, President Roosevelt. President Roosevelt was quite a guy. He took us out of the Depression, and if it wasn't for him, I think we'd be in real trouble. Money was so tough in those days. World War I, of course, concluded, was it 1919? And guys who came back from the service couldn't get jobs. Depression times were terrible, really terrible. Nobody could get jobs. It was so difficult. They were selling apples off push carts in the street. I remember that vividly. And also, during the Depression, we were all in the same boat. You know, we would only get new shoes maybe once or twice a year. I remember I put cardboard in my shoes to fill the holes up. That was really tough times, but we were happy. We really did. We were happy. On weekends, like I told you, my family would get around a piano. My mother would play the piano. She played beautifully. A couple of my aunts had beautiful voices. My dad had a wonderful voice. Incidentally, I got to put this in for my dad. He was on dialysis in the latter part of his life. He'd go over on the dialysis table from the minute he came into the dialysis room to the time they told him he was free to go. He would sing continually. It would be 4 hours. I couldn't believe it. But he loved to sing, and I guess that's where I inherit that trait from.
The most important thing I remember was my father he was a carpenter, and there was no work. So we were not forced, but had the privilege of moving for 1 year to Lancaster, where my mother was a laundry woman, actually, and my father was the chauffeur for a wealthy family. My mother had met the woman, or worked for her, actually, right after World War I. So she offered them a place for us to go, and so we left Holbrook, where I grew up. We left Holbrook for 1 year, and it really saved us. I started school up there in Lancaster, it was. It was a difficult time, but we didn't even know it because parents were so protective.
This is Sue Scheible, staff reporter for the Patriot Ledger and Gatehouse Media New England. For more coverage, see today's edition of the Patriot Ledger or go to patriotledger.com.